Hi everyone, my name is Nain Mirabel Yuh and I am from eBase Africa, coming from Cameroon, and I have been involved in ESIC for the past 6 months, specifically in Working Group 4, where we were looking at methods and innovation for making living evidence synthesis. So over the past 6 months, we have been engaged in looking at innovative ways that we can do living evidence synthesis. And I have contributed, we have reflected in our groups weekly, 1 hour every Wednesday for the past 6 months. And my God, when I look back, I think that this is the first time we have been in such a marathon, and I'm very excited because I think that I am about to make history with every other person.
So can you tell me, what have you learned, through your involvement in the working group? What are some of the things that you've taken away?
I have a lot of lessons that I have learned through the process, and specifically the work that we are doing is really important. I really need to look at not leaving this work gather dust on the shelves, but bringing it to those who really need it, who really need to use it. I'm speaking about the mother who has her kids and she needs to make informed decisions. I'm speaking about persons with disability who need to make informed decisions, students who need to make informed decisions. I'm also thinking about teachers who need to make informed decisions about the best practices or the best ways in which they can transmit knowledge to the students. Not only the policymakers and practitioners, because most times when we talk about informing, or most times when we talk about evidence-informed decision making, we think that this is limited to policymakers and perhaps practitioners, especially in the health sector, because this is where evidence has been engaged mostly. But when I look at it, or from my experience, I see that if you limit it to these people, it creates what we call asymmetry of knowledge, because policymakers now, we have so much knowledge, researchers or practitioners, we have so much knowledge, but the citizen, the patient, will not have that knowledge to also make informed decisions about the availability of other drugs or other methods that they can engage in. The citizens in the communities will not have the right knowledge that they need to be able to make informed decisions. And these are people who are being fed with misinformation on social media and things like that. So, and this fuels the decisions that they are making and not helping to improve their lives. So the lessons that I'm learning is that we are trying to put the key people, all the evidence users, on the driver's seat to be able to direct the research and not the other way around.
That's great. And in terms of the last 2 days, can you reflect a little bit on the conversations that you've had? What's something that surprised you out of those conversations over the last 2 days?
2 things very important to me. This morning when Fernando was speaking, it got me reflecting again on the paper that I wrote on web accessibility for people with disability. So throughout the process, and most often, we reflect on people with disability, we think about them, but nobody thinks about them in the end. For example, what we're doing here, we haven't thought about how accessible this roadmap will be for people with disability. And this morning when he was speaking, I put that on the LinkedIn. I'm happy to have people go to my LinkedIn and read that paper, because it highlights that people with disability are invited to the dinner, but not to the dinner table. And these are key people whose voices, whose interests need to be served. And another thing is, I'm just coming from a session where we were looking at other forms of data. With my experience working with policymakers, I have had experiences where I'm talking to them about using evidence to inform their decisions, and then they ask me, what makes you think that the data that we have, the local data that we have, is not evidence enough? Why should we use the evidence that you're bringing? So this challenged us to look at other forms of data, and I was really impressed that these discussions are already coming up within the ESIC consensus. And I think that when we start speaking to local data, the local data may have some loops, but if we start speaking to it, it's going to challenge it and it's going to improve this data. And I'm really excited because the work that we are doing within the unlocking data is looking at how we can gather all this data that we have from local sources, grey literature, and then have it in one repository, and then bring together all data actors, including policymakers who produce the research, CSOs, NGOs, researchers who produce the RCTs, and everybody come together and look at this data. How can we marry them together? What do we need to look at? What needs to be improved? Quality assurance and all those things, so that at the end of the day, we are considering every other source and then we're speaking to them. Because apparently, the only way RCTs have improved over time is because we have been speaking to it, critiquing it, and it has improved. The same way, if we start speaking to local data, grey literature, stories from indigenous ways, it's also going to improve.
And when you look at the roadmap, so you've spoken about a lot of things that that you've learned, that there's potential and you're excited about. But when you look at the roadmap, what's one thing that you are excited about in terms of its possibility for impact?
The one thing that I'm excited about is that this time around, I'm coming with a policymaker from Cameroon. So she is on the table where the discussions are happening, because most of the time I have to bring the research to her and tell her that this is the best way, but this time around she's here. So it tells me that we have great potential just by allowing or inviting policymakers to come to where these discussions are happening, so that when I bring it to them, it's not a strange thing. We now have like a mutual understanding on this is what we have been talking about. This is how we can move forward. How do I make informed decisions? Okay, this is the evidence. How do I move forward from here? So it's really, the potential of engaging citizens, policymakers on this discussion on the roadmap is what really intrigues me. So I'm really happy that people in the community, even the youths out there, are being considered as people who need to use evidence in their daily lives.